Thank you, everybody, for joining us. We have Kymberlee Price here to talk to us about the implications of software security practices and how they disproportionately impact small to medium-sized businesses. So, oh yes, the founder of Zadig Security, I should highlight.
Thank you so much, Alex. Today, let's get into how small and medium businesses are getting left behind based on enterprise pricing models and, quite frankly, predatory pricing by software vendors. This is what it's like to work in security right now. Everything's fine. Attackers pwn, rinse, repeat the same attacks over and over. They don't need exotic O-days. They can run password-based attacks. They can just go pull reused passwords. They can do credential stuffing. There's all sorts of ways to break into companies that don't involve exploit code and O-days, or even really worrying about those unpatched vulnerabilities that haven't been taken care of. And so we're all here in security talking about threat actors and ransomware and malware, and the reality is it doesn't take the best of the best to compromise a company. And so it's, as Jag said yesterday, it's really hard to stay motivated in this trough of disillusionment of, are we even making a difference for folks when every week there's a new breach and there's a new story about a major company with a big, well-funded security team getting owned again. It would be really easy to just move off the grid and raise baby goats. But my mortgage company won't sign off on that plan, and so I'm still working in security. But I've been saying for the last 2 years that DevSecOps is failing, and it's the security team's fault in many ways. But the reality is it's worse than that, because small and medium companies don't even have DevSecOps programs. They don't have the resources in terms of people, tools, or budget. So DevSecOps may be done incorrectly and inefficiently, but it's also a privilege that only the best resourced companies have. So it's actually worse than I even thought it was for the last 2 years. And now I'm in a space of specifically doing product security for small and medium businesses. So what is a small and medium business? It's under $1 billion a year in revenue. That doesn't sound so small, does it? That's a pretty good chunk of revenue there, and under 1,000 employees. So why am I focused on that space? That sounds very small. It's 33.2 million small businesses in the US alone. And the data I'm going to be sharing today is US-based. It is from the US Chamber of Commerce. Getting this data on a global scale is not something that I've had the time to do, because it's country by country. Some countries have these statistics, others don't. So unfortunately, all my data today is US-based. But 33.2 million small and medium businesses in the United States, 99.9% of all companies in the United States are SMBs. That means when you hear about the economy and the stock market and how the economy is doing well, we're really probably talking about the 0.1% of companies, for the most part, that are being used as the definition of our economy here. And 45.9, so basically 46% of Americans are employed by small and medium companies. So if you think for a minute about the impact that would have on a community if a ransomware operator decided to just take out all the SMBs in Dallas or all the SMBs in New Orleans, what's that going to do to the local economy and to all the people who work at those small and medium businesses who can't go to work, can't get a paycheck? When you look at what happened in Maryland after that big ship took down a bridge and closed the port, the state of Maryland's unemployment system is not designed to have more than 100,000 people in it at any given time. The people who developed that system never imagined a world where over 100,000 people would need unemployment. So each day, when it ticks up past 99,999 people applying for unemployment, it shuts down, and no one else can apply that day. Like, And these are dock workers and people who can't get paid and can't pay their mortgage and can't make their car payments and can't give their kids lunch money for school or go to the grocery store because they don't have income because the port is closed and they're waiting on unemployment or they're trying to get on unemployment. And so imagine what this could do to the global economy. Speaking of the global economy, small and medium businesses are almost 44% of the GDP. So again, we talk about the economy in terms of the NASDAQ and the S&P 500, but if you take out 44% of the GDP for a month or two or a quarter, our economy is not going to look so good anymore. But these companies also have $185 billion in annual tech spending. Where's that money going if it's not going towards security? Well, it's going towards generating revenue for their company. Security's a cost center. You don't have anything to secure if you're not generating revenue. So when you look at even CISOs, Levi Strauss, not an SMB, but their CISO, every time, their former CISO, when approached by a vendor, their first question was, how's this gonna help me sell more jeans? Because that's what the technology is there for, is generating revenue. So they have a lot of money, they influence the economy, they influence local communities and the lives of everyday Americans, and so that's why we have to care about this a whole heck of a lot. So it gets a little more complicated though, because there's two different kinds of SMBs at a very high level. There are the tech consumers and the tech producers. So if your accountant gets hit by ransomware the week taxes are due, you might have a problem. That's a tech consumer. They don't need a DevSecOps program. They're not creating software. But the tech producers, the startups, frequently VC funded, but not always, sometimes bootstrapped, they're producing technology. They're the ones who need a DevSecOps program. And the problem is they also don't have them because they don't have security teams frequently. And we'll talk a little bit more about what the realities of security looks like in an SMB based on case studies from my clients. So to make it a little more real, here are some of the SMBs in your neighborhood. Here are some of the tech-producing SMBs. I just listed them in alphabetic order because that seemed like a good approach to take. So we start with BugCrowd. If you've got your bug bounty on BugCrowd, they are considered an SMB. Have you asked them about their security operations? Have you asked them about their DevSecOps program? Calendly. How many people here use Calendly or use Detectify? Or some of these companies aren't even Series A yet. Rad Security. Brilliant people at this startup. They're doing Kubernetes security. They're not even A funded yet. Like they're still on seed funding. Do you think they have a big budget for DevSecOps? Probably not. There's a company on this list, Fullbay. They're Phoenix-based. They do manufacturing software. Vanta's interesting because they are a tech startup, and a lot of my clients, these small tech companies that are coming to me, and then they get sticker shock at how much it costs to actually have a security program. They're like, well, we can just get Vanta and it'll tell us what we need to do. And it's like, well, but you still don't have people to interpret what Vanta is telling you need to do, and you don't have people to go do what Vanta is telling you to do. Like, you can't tool your way out of this problem. So here's some tech-producing SMBs. And here are some tech-consuming SMBs. Chino Bandito, if you have time while you're here in Phoenix, love them. Chinese, Cuban, Mexican food. Seriously. Jade Red Chicken, quesadilla, so good. I love them. They're phenomenal. They have point-of-sale systems. They have employees. They need HR. They need payroll. They have a newsletter. They have a website. All of those things, they're counting on their SaaS providers to do the right security thing. Do you think they know that they need to change the password on their router? Do you think they know their router came with a default password? Probably no. When you look through this list, Dr. Gary Modicki, he was a plastic surgeon who got ransomed, and the ransomware operators, to pressure him into paying the ransom, started releasing photos of his clients before and after with their photos involved. Plastic surgery patients, online. Pay the ransom. or will continue to leak your client photos. There is only one company on this list. By the way, Penny's Coffee, lovely coffee shop in Buffalo I've been to. Doghouse Cat Pet Store in Richmond, Virginia. Vibressa Brewery. Oh my God, love this brewery. If you're ever in Winchester, Virginia, you should go. The only one on this list that I feel good about their security is Jurisdiction Clothing. They're in Maryland. And the owner's husband is a CISO. So I'm pretty sure they've got their stuff in order. I'm not too worried about giving them my credit card through their website and ordering clothing, which I have done. But most of these companies don't have a security program. And why would they? First off, if you're a tech consumer, you don't know about RSA and you're certainly not going to go to it. But even if you do, all those tech producers have booths at RSA even. But let's say you're a tech consumer or you're a startup and you go to RSA and it's chaos. It's not like there's an aisle of SIEM providers where you can go comparison shop the SIEM options. Who knows where they are? You're just walking around. Like, the Pike Street market is better organized than the RSA vendor floor. And if you walk up to a vendor and you're like, hey, I need endpoint detection. Tell me about your solution and your pricing and what I can do with it. And then you tell them you have 120 endpoints. They don't want to talk to you. That's not a big enough deal for their salespeople to care about. And so this does not help them in any way, shape, or form. And so we get to what I call the security layer cake. Here are all a bunch of tools that we layer into our security programs. And even tech startups frequently don't know, what do I need? What should I prioritize? In what order? I've had tech startup clients who think that endpoint detection is MDM. Nope. I've worked at Fortune 500 companies who didn't understand that Rapid7 was not Sneak and that they do different things and they scan different stuff. You don't have source code repository scanning because you have a vuln management program in your IT department. They're different things. And so when you look at this stack of things, there's no consumer reports for these companies to figure out, what do I need and in what order should I bring into my environment? So even if they did know what they need, and even if they did go to RSA, SMBs purchase differently than a big enterprise. For starters, they don't usually have IT teams. It's usually the CFO or the CEO making a purchasing decision. About 30% of the larger mid-sized companies do have an IT influence in that purchase, but the final approver is the CEO or CFO. Some of the larger mid-sized companies, particularly if they're to the point where they have to care about FedRAMP or things like that, they may have a vendor procurement process, but most of the SMBs don't, because they wouldn't know what to ask and they wouldn't know how to validate your answers anyway. So they don't have an IT team, they don't have a procurement team, and they certainly don't want to sit through your hour-long timeshare presentation about your product so that next week you can send them a slide deck that tells them, oh, we can't afford that anyway. Like, they want upfront pricing. They want to be able to go to a marketplace, put down a credit card, try it for free for 14 days before committing to it. They want monthly payments because they don't have a war chest of cash to just give you an annual check for. Like, they need to pay for it on a monthly basis, and they need, if they have a slow month financially, to be able to say, you know what, we have to tighten the belt. We have to go to austerity measures, and we're going to have to drop 3 tools this month. We want to have them back in the future, but we didn't close the deals we wanted to. So there's a lot of things that are different about the way they purchase. And so let's say you are a really enlightened tech startup, and you've heard about all these hacks, and you look at MGM or Microsoft or these big companies with big, well-staffed teams that are still getting hacked, and instead of saying to yourself, well, I mean, if they're getting hacked, what hope do I have? Because that happens. But if you say, you know what, I've been doing some homework. I've been talking to my friends, because that's the other thing. They get purchasing advice from their friends because they can't get it from the internet. Everything's a sale. Everything's SEO. Like I said, there's no consumer reports saying of the 5 providers in this space, here's how they rank against each other. So let's say you've realized, you know what, I want SSO. I've done the work to roll out MFA, multi-factor authentication. I didn't do YubiKeys because, you know what, Penny's Coffee is not going to do YubiKeys. Like, SMS MFA would be phenomenal if we could get them there. And but it's a management nightmare every time I'm onboarding and offboarding employees. Whether it's a good attrition or a bad attrition, I have to offboard them from everything, and it's a hassle. I want to go with SSO. I hear that's the thing to do. I'm going to get an SSO provider. Oh, but wait a minute. Here's this hidden cost of the SSO, because we use Zoom. And we use like a Zoom base model that we can afford in our SMB, but to get it to support SSO, we have to upgrade to the enterprise level. And now it's going to cost us 25% more per user. And, oh wait, we also use Slack. And Slack also wants us to upgrade for the privilege of using SSO. So now we've got a 72% increase on our monthly Slack usage cost. And we use Notion. We don't use Confluence and we don't use SharePoint because we're a scrappy little startup. We use Notion. 88% increase. You name it. Like, there is an entire website that lists out all these different companies that charge you for the privilege of SSO because they've gated SSO behind a higher tier service, a higher tier price model. So let's talk a little bit about Microsoft, because Microsoft, Brad Smith, testified before the US government this summer that Microsoft knows that their customers face 4,000 password-based attacks every second of every day. Not every minute, not every hour, every second of every day there are 4,000 password-based attacks. And so let's say you are a company that is developing software and you're using GitHub, and you are on the team version at $4 per developer per month. But you want to implement SSO because you're concerned about managing access to your production code. And MFA is a usability hassle without SSO. I'm sorry, you need GitHub Enterprise for that. That's $21 per user per month, which is a security tax of 425%. Now, when I started doing consulting for small and medium businesses, and I'm seeing them try to stitch together SonarQube and Sneak and Detectify, and like they've got all these different tools in their tech stack, outputting into different security dashboards, and now they're having to build all the automation to build it in, like to plumb it into their ticketing system because the developers aren't looking at the security dashboards. And I would advocate for GitHub Advanced Security. Okay, let's talk about GitHub Advanced Security for a minute. If you go ahead and upgrade from the $4 per month to the $21 per month for GitHub Enterprise, you get standard security, which is basically advanced security for public repositories, but not private ones. You get no security for your private repositories on GitHub Enterprise. You have to upgrade an additional $49 per user per month to get advanced security. Now, to be fair, advanced security is going to replace your Sneak and your SonarQube, and like it's going to help you. Like you won't need to manage a truffle hog instance to find your leaked secrets. Like it's going to do all that for you. There are security products it is replacing in your budget. But this is a really, really steep cost because now you're at $70 per developer per month, which is a total security tax from your original GitHub's team to GitHub's team, GitHub Enterprise plus advanced security, 1,650% more. Small and medium companies can't afford that, and so they're just not. So what does security in an SMB look like? I have a client whose COO is their G Suite admin. They have no IT team. The HR person does the employee onboarding and offboarding based on a checklist. They have no logging. They don't know if their developers in San Francisco are logging in from Russia at 2 in the morning and downloading terabytes of data. Everyone in customer support has access to customer assets. There's no role-based access control. They have MFA but not SSO. They have no way to enforce MFA on everything. They can on the G Suite, but again, they don't have IT admin controls. They don't have MDM. And this is the reality for what is a profitable Series D consumer IoT company. They know they're concerned about security, and they still are struggling to get the budget allocated for the people they need to implement all these additional tools. This is the spending hole that never ends. And it's rough. It's really hard. They don't have the people, they don't have the money, and they don't have the tools. So where do we go from here? That means security at an SMB the cake is a lie. There is no security layer cake for them. They don't even have crumbs yet. It's unattainable and it's inaccessible. They don't know what they need, and even if they did, they don't have the people to implement it, and they can't afford the tooling at those enterprise prices to get the security features implemented. And now, all of a sudden, the scene shifts. Ransomware has entered the chat. And now we have something that threatens to shut off their revenue generation. Breaches, smeeches, will give people, a couple years of identity monitoring. Our stock price, by the way, this is not made up, stock price goes down on average 4% for 1 quarter when you get breached. So the question of how much does it cost the company to clean up a breach versus prevent a breach? That is the business decision being made by boardrooms across the country. And if you're an SMB, the breach isn't what scares you. It's the ransomware shutting off your ability to deliver product and deliver services and generate revenue. And so now all of a sudden, small and medium companies are real interested in how do I prevent ransomware? How do I protect myself against ransomware? And we give them some pretty specific recommendations. MFA, ideally SSO to help you manage it. Backup and recovery, you need it and you need to practice it regularly, and role-based access controls so that your marketing intern doesn't have access to prod. There's more stuff on the list after that, but if I could only have 3 wish list items, that's it. And getting those companies on board with those things. Do they have logging yet? Nope. Nope. It's all about how do we help you recover from the inevitable breach because you don't have the security you need and you're not going to anytime soon. So ultimately, because of predatory pricing, companies don't have the security they need at the small and medium business space. And so the future's gonna look like seatbelts, where the government's gonna have to say, hey, car manufacturers, seatbelt technology was invented in the 1800s. It's now the mid-1900s, and you need to start putting them in cars. I don't care that the market doesn't want them. All cars have to have seatbelts, because we can't start telling people you have to use seatbelts if it's not in the car. You can't expect someone to buy a car without seatbelts and then go figure out, well, what seatbelts work in my car? Who's going to install them? Were they installed correctly? What kind of maintenance do they require? And that's what we're doing with software. It is not secure by default if you have to upgrade to get the security features, or if you have to buy another product to secure the product you just bought. And so what should secure by design mean? Well, like I said, we spend a lot of time talking with small and medium companies. We have some pretty strong opinions about this. And we've written a blog post at Zadig about the 9 security features that we think should be included in every SaaS software by default. And you notice I say included, not free. You don't go to a car dealership to buy a car that's advertised for $8,000 and then hand-pick seatbelts and turn signals and a steering wheel and brake lights. No, it's just baked into the cost. And so there shouldn't be a way to buy software that doesn't have these features available to you in the base model. Bake it into the price. And I'm not saying every security feature needs to be free. But if my GitHub, instead of $4 a month, was $6 a month and it supported SSO, I think you'd get a lot of companies saying, yes, absolutely, I am going to choose to be more secure here because that's an attainable cost for me. That's not, 250% increase. That's something I can afford. So if you go take a look at our blog post and you look at our safety bar and you disagree, or if you think we forgot things or that we should add things, please, please, please reach out. Let us know. It's a living document. But these are the things that when we're making a recommendation to our customers, because we review pretty much every security tool there is out there so that we know what to recommend. And we do these security reviews, and then we're like, okay, here's the one that we think is best based on our safety bar. We want to make sure our safety bar is a good one. And we know some of these things, like that's a pipe dream. Nobody's supporting SSO by default for no additional cost, but they should. And so I can't hold people accountable if I don't tell them what my expectations are. I remember being told once that unexpressed expectations are premeditated resentments. And so software vendors, I'm telling you, this is the stuff I expect you to include in the base model. And if you don't, I'm going to resent it. So if we don't do this, if we don't do less predatory pricing and actually help small and medium companies get access to these security features, the future looks like software liability. And in 2023, the National Cybersecurity Strategy committed the US government to develop legislation establishing liability for software products and services. Do I think that's going to happen this year? Absolutely not. It's an election year. Nothing is going to happen, and this is going to take an act of Congress to get passed. However, both houses of Congress and both political parties agree that cybersecurity is a priority. Now, the big software vendors are lobbying hard against this. Trust us, we're going to do the right thing, we promise. But I don't think we can count on that, because as we've seen through all the talks yesterday and many of the talks today, it's about the money. And there's too much money in shaking down clients for security features instead of just including them in the base model at a more attainable cost. So I do think we'll see this, particularly if there's another Colonial Pipeline type incident. I think we will see a overreaction in legislation versus a thoughtful, measured response. But this is what will happen in the future if we don't change our relationship with security feature revenue models. Because at the end of the day, our job is to drive customer trust and safety. And there's a lot of companies, in our space who are now thinking, oh, AI is going to solve this for us. Is it? Well, just like all those other security tools, unless you have the security staff who can interpret the AI results, how do you know what's real, what's right, what's accurate, what to do with that information? And so once again, we've got all these innovations, we just have to make them more accessible and more affordable for these small and medium companies, because if we don't, and a threat actor decides to take out, all of a city, they're going to really mess up our economy pretty badly. So I would ask us all that we go advocate for policy change, both within our companies and within our government, policy change in how we price things, but also policy change in terms of how we hold vendors accountable for the software they ship, so that they can't just defer all responsibility to the customer for the fact that they didn't buy add-on products to secure their product, and continue to raise this as an issue on your social media or anytime you have an opportunity. So let's go make things better together, shall we? Thanks.